The human body, to live a long time, is meant to move. And working out has become a cultural thing that happens under fluorescent lights, in a box, in a particular setting, with a particular kind of clothes on. And when I look around at the pockets of longevity around the world, the centenarians, like, they're not doing P90X. Sure, they benefit from doing some high intensity exercise, but they're moving, they're gardening, they're outside, they're walking, accumulating steps, and we become so damn sedentary.
Hey everyone, today I speak with Dr. Anthony Balduzzi. He has helped more than 60,000 people improve their health, and I was really impressed with our conversation. I resonate so much with his holistic approach to fitness. It's not just about knocking out high-intensity exercise, but it's rather a very sort of global and well-rounded approach that includes things like mindset, scheduling, nutrition, sleep, and non-exercise activity, as well as exercise. I have to say, of all the people I've discussed exercise with, he seems to have the tightest grip on how do we help people who've been struggling to implement healthy changes really find a way to integrate these things. And it's one of the concepts he specifically talks about is integration into your schedule. Just like you would schedule a business meeting, you can schedule some of these things or build them into your life in a somewhat seamless and very non-friction way. If you're someone who is fit, I think you'll get some pointers. And if you're someone who's looking to get more fit or perhaps struggling, then Anthony's programs, the Fit Father Project, the Fit Mother Project, I'm really, really excited to share with you. And with that, we'll now go to the discussion with Dr. Anthony. Hey guys, there was an audio glitch on my side for about the first 9 minutes. So I went back and reread this transcript. So because of that, I won't be on the video for about the first 9 minutes. Still, a great conversation with Dr. Balduzzi. So I hope you will stick around and go through it. And then I'll be back on the video side of things about 9 minutes in. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Really excited to have you here, Anthony, and discuss how people can remove roadblocks to becoming healthier and more fit, which is such a massive part of being healthy. We talk so much on the show about gut health, leaky gut, SIBO, candida, all very important. But at the same time, you've got to be exercising to be fully healthy. I am convinced of that. And you put together what I think is a really awesome program for mothers and for fathers to just help reduce friction and allow them to get fit and stay fit. So I am really curious to pick your brain about what you've learned, what tips you can offer people. So I'm very excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here, and I really appreciate the work that you do. I mean, to go so deep on gut health, and I've learned a lot from some of the YouTube videos that you've put out, and I'm excited to share my perspective on the fitness, habits, formation, behavioral psychology, all for busy parents, particularly those over 40 who have kids and want to be around for a long time. That's what I specialize in, helping people do that.
Yeah, and I love how you frame that. You're making me think of a friend of mine who has complained to me recently, I've got low back pain. I'm not as fit as I used to be. I've not been exercising or eating well, and it really hit me, the impact it's having, because I'm afraid now to bend down when my kid was running at me and grab him and pick him up. And when he shared that, I put myself in his perspective, how awful that must feel, right? Because it's a jump and your timing is, oh, sorry, can't pick you up. You can play, but I kind of can't do that one key movement.
Painful for us as parents to feel like we lose our ability to engage with life and keep up with our kids. It changes our inherent mindset and how we interact with all things. We start to come from the subtle lens that I can't, or I'm over the hill, or I have limitations. And when that mindset is present in your physical body, it absolutely creeps into other areas of your life. I believe it also imprints culture onto our kids, because health is culture. Like, culturally right now, we know that most people are unhealthy, at least speaking in the United States. The obesity rates, metabolic syndrome, all these things, it's cultural. We're used to seeing people eating unhealthy, not moving enough, on the phones. And each of our families are like a cell in this greater organism, and it has a unique culture. And if we're passing that along, and that's what our kids see, oh, you get old and you stop moving, like, there's a generational impact. Now, that can seem kind of negative, but the converse is also true, that when you get the family unit healthy, it passes on generational health and wealth to the kids, and you get to set yourself up because there's more tools today than ever before to be healthy, to live a long time. We understand about the body, the way things break down, how to fix it. So we're at this like crossroads right now where we can choose which path we want to go, and we pave that with our heart and our motivations, our systems for living and how we do that. And yeah, I mean, this is what I love talking about.
It's that interesting Matthew effect from Leviticus. The better it gets, the better it gets, or the worse it gets, the worse it gets, right? So
Yeah.
the good news there is that as people start to improve, the better they should get yet still, which makes me think about what are some of the most common things people gain. Obviously, maybe a little bit less overweight, maybe better able to move, maybe better energy. And I love how you frame this sort of bigger picture perspective of how you interact with your kids, kind of globally. Maybe you're more active now. Maybe you go for a walk instead of sitting on the couch. And so it's less device time, plus it's more movement, plus it's more connection with your kids. So again, these things probably cluster in a beneficial way. But you've been working with so many people for so long. Are there a few top things that you consistently see regarding the rewards or benefits when people start improving their level of fitness?
For sure. I'm going to speak in some degree of metaphor, but we'll bring it down into some physiology too. First off, you get more life energy, the zest to participate in life. What's amazing about the human experience is we have these body vehicles that we use to interact with everything. And the quality of the energy that's produced in the mitochondria, the level of inflammation in the body, all is impacting our clarity of thinking, our neurotransmitter levels. And so everything we do from the vantage point of having a healthier body gains more color, more engagement, more happiness. And also when we are not in a good state and we know we're out of alignment, our system is like a little bit depressed. And we're oftentimes in a very sympathetic fight or flight dominant mode of the nervous system, which not only breaks down the body, but makes everything more anxious and more fearful and less connected. And so we gain more life out of everything we do from both a mental, but also a physiologic basis. We also gain a sense of like self-love back. I believe that this word health is so important because it means wholeness, that it comes from the old Germanic meaning wholeness. And wholeness, another word for that is integrity, the idea of being whole. And we often hear people use the buzz phrases of body, mind, and spirit. And those could mean many different things. But we have this idea that there's different aspects of ourself or our being that could be good. And I know there's a lot of people midlife that have loving family and connections, successful businesses, strong faith, but their health is not intact. And so when they get that piece aligned, what they gain is this subtle sense of wholeness and integrity, which is hard to put your finger on. It's just like, I did it. I took that area that I knew was a deficit in the back of my mind, and I finally did it. Through that process of actually getting that on track, you must inherently face your bad habits, the problematic areas of your environment, mental blocks and belief systems that are no longer serving you. So it's not just about like getting the physical body healthy. It's like the path to doing that is a personal development and even spiritual development process. So you gain wholeness from that. And integrity, which I think is amazing. And then you could also say you get years. You get years and potentially decades back to be with your family, to create new memories, to make whatever impact that you want to make. And you also get to, in time, just by your very nature of your being, be inspirational to those around you. You become a node and a beacon of like good light and health, which is exactly what you do with your business and all the communication you do. You are standing as a light post that shining light on so many people, like this is the way. All of us get to do that in some way, shape, or form when we get ourselves healthy. And it's more heroic that we went from being unhealthy to healthy. We went through the hero's journey, and that's what's attractive and compelling to people. Like, it's not as compelling to be like, yep, I was an Olympic gymnast when I was 13, and I still have a six-pack when I'm 60. It's like, dude, good for you. That's amazing. Like, but I want to hear about the person that got off the prescription medications, lost the 50 pounds, got over the knee pain, and now is crushing it.
I love it. I love thinking of each person as sort of this lighthouse beacon. Whatever they do, maybe you're an accountant and you prevent someone from having a huge tax bill that may have flared their finances. Or maybe you're a mother and the way you show up when your kids are doing frustrating things is either caring, empathetic, and redirecting, or kind of snarky and snapping, depending on how healthy you are. I think that the importance of that can't be overstated. And then also, it gets me thinking about my own experience, which is I had a year in college that really sucked. It was suffering. I had an intestinal parasite. I felt like I was falling apart. And to your point of the hero's journey, and I was thinking about this the other day, it was 1 year of suffering. And that gave me 20 years afterward of meaning. I did an entire career. And I was thinking about this in the sauna the other day, and I was saying, is the math worth it? It was 1 year of suffering, not to, discount that year, because that year really sucked. And there were moments when I said, I don't want to live like this. If this is the rest of my life, I'm not sure I'd want to be there. So that year of suffering really opened up a whole lifetime of meaning. So for those of you who maybe are going through it, firstly, fitness is one of the ways to escape. But secondly, and I think so well said, this gives you a chance to have that hero's journey where you dig yourself out of a hole. And really, so much meaning can really be taken from that experience.
And if you have kids that are in their teenage years or, in early college years, they get to witness this with a good degree of awareness of what you just did. And that is a powerful teaching lesson as a parent, to be able to them to see, wow, dad just got ripped, mom lost the weight. Like, that's insanely cool. I love that. And I think I am such a big believer, because we've run 60,000 fathers and mothers through our programs. And I see the groups that are successful and the ones that are not. And the ones that are the most successful, they have the same nutrition frameworks, the same workouts, but they connect more deeply to why they're doing what they're doing. And this is just like the health and fitness information's out there right now. Like, we generally have good advice. I think people could look at a dinner menu and know that it's probably better to order the fruits, veggies, or wild-caught salmon than it is the burger and the other things. But it's a matter of decisions and behaviors and meaning and connection. And so we're so big with our program before we get people on nutrition is to have them go through this mindset, and I could even say heart set, but like mission statement. We actually have them write a mission statement about asking deep questions like, how is my health connected to all of my values? How is my health impacting my ability to show up as a parent, to make money, to feel spiritually aligned? What does life look like if I don't make any changes? What could life look like if I made a radical shift right now? What's the cost of making that change, and is it worth it? We need to get this internal alignment, because just the way the brain works, we have the logical prefrontal cortex, but deeper, we have the limbic system. That is where all the emotions are kind of stirring under the surface and shaping and bubbling up into our behaviors and our higher level cognitive processes. So my thinking is we need to get these areas aligned, and that's massive. And then once we're aligned, we get the sustainable plan and the system in place with eating, exercise, sleep, etc. And then we surround you with support and like-minded people that are all like on the same vibe, to just surround you in positivity, because we get unhealthy sometimes in like isolation. We're stressed, years of like maybe marriage is not great, work pressures are there, life is busy, and we kind of hole up. We use food as a crutch to kind of like self-medicate, and we get disconnected and we kind of go internal. We pack on weight. It's kind of like metaphoric. We shield ourselves. So this process of community, as long as these alignment pieces, is also very important.
Yeah, I love the bit about community. And again, I'll just share one of my experiences with this. In business, I was kind of an island unto myself for many, many years until I moved to Austin. And it was very hard to suffer alone, feeling like I had no one I could speak to. I mean, sure, I could talk with my girlfriend, my parents, my brother, a friend, but if they weren't sort of in entrepreneurship, it was more of a, oh man, that's tough, I'm sorry, kind of supportive and platitudes. But when I moved here and had other entrepreneurs who are like, dude, my company lost money 3 years in a row. And it's like, wow, I thought, we had maybe a bad month and you had 3 bad years. And so that community and that support makes you feel like you're not crazy, like you're not alone.
Yeah.
And has the ability to really provide you with, I think, motivations and insights from other people who are going through or got through similar struggles. So I love that you're building a community of people to support one another.
Because we can build resiliency when we're together. I think there's that old African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it's just so true. There's like the synergies. It's not like we're like a single-celled organism. We are a symphony of trillions of cells all working together because there's a synergistic effect that happens when life collides. And oftentimes when we're going through these health and fitness transformation journeys, there's times where we're down times where either the scale's not moving, life is so busy we couldn't get the workouts in, and we get the chance to borrow connection and resiliency by being around other people. And this is why people with accountability coaches, when they do weight loss journeys, have like 90% increased chance of success. If you're checking in with somebody and there's someone who cares, like, doesn't that just tell you everything you need to know? Like, it's not about the information, it's about the structure, the sticking to itness, and eventually like having a plan that's sustainable enough that it fits your life long term. But yeah, the people component is massive to this.
By the way, if this has been helpful, please subscribe, comment, and share this with one person you think it might help. So we use the people and this system to start moving through what you develop in this sort of 5-pillar model of health. Let's run through those one by one, just so people get a sense for how do we organize, admittedly, probably the gazillion things that you've heard I can do to get fit. As someone who's taken 60,000 people through this journey, you've likely identified the best pillars, how to organize them, structure them, maybe even sequence them. So let's go through the first one.
For sure. And I want to talk about this, and I think it's important. This is kind of like a framework that I use to explain what I've come to realize is the hierarchy of importance, because there's a lot of things we know we could change in our lives. We could go hire a personal trainer and work out more. We could improve our nutrition. We could improve our sleep and our mindset. So like, where do you start? And I've made a case, and one part of the bottom part of this pyramid I'm going to build up is mindset. And I don't know if I need to go into that more than we already have. You got to get that aligned, this internal congruency that gets that burning desire for why you want to transform and really makes this greater than just a physical journey. But like, if you can bring in your family, other core values, and maybe identities that you hold, then you really have some power. The other important thing is sleep. Sleep is also foundational. I think the research is so clear. Like those that start diet and exercise plans but are not sleeping adequately enough, they lose less weight, they lose more muscle, because quite frankly, sleep just helps create this proper hormonal environment. Our brain regulates its appetite hormones like leptin, ghrelin, neuropeptide Y properly when we're sleeping. If we miss sleep, we're more insulin resistant, worse glucose control. So it's like cortisol levels are higher. So I think a lot of people need to fundamentally understand that we're circadian beings and we actually got to get that good enough. I'm not saying like perfect, but if you're at a stage right now where you know your sleep is jacked up, you're waking up a lot during the night, you have low sleep scores if you measure that, or quite frankly, you're just sleeping like 6 hours or less, then that is a huge area of improvement, because anything else we tack on top of that, more training, more nutrition changes, let alone a calorie deficit, is just going to be perceived as a greater stress for the body. Yes. And that may work for some time, but you hit the sympathetic nervous system, which is a short-term tool, but you make that your default state, the only road that leads to is burnout and infections and overtraining and injuries.
I've been there.
So like fundamentally, you just need to get that corrected.
So let's double click on two of these, mindset and then sleep. One of the things, and we discussed this on the podcast years ago, I don't recall the guest's name, but he shared that when your motivation is built around others, not just yourself, people tend to be able to work harder with their fitness goals. Not to say harder is always better, but it just makes the point that if the motivation is got to do it for me, or got to get stronger faster for my wife, for my kids, whatever, people tend to do better with that sort of communal locus of motivation rather than just the internal one.
I completely agree. We do show up. I mean, it's like, I imagine this is kind of like a gory example, but I think of this movie Hacksaw Ridge, where there was that medic who's going and like saving people. It was probably in World War II, and he just keeps on pulling people back. Like he had the motivation to go get into the line of fire, drag someone back, and drag dozens of people back, not for his own, security. You can tap into a deeper level when you're going from those places. And another thing I want to say is it's good to stack many different kinds of motivation. It is a good motivation motivation to want to look better, to want to look in the mirror and say, damn, like I actually am proud of what I am, or I'm not afraid to take my shirt off. Like that's a good motivation, but that's only a slice. You got to build up your whole pie of all these different motivations. So the motivation, the sleep, very important. The next area that many people want to jump to when you think fitness, get fit, is exercise. That is not the place to go next. The place to go next is food. And I know you speak a ton about food, and we're probably going to agree fundamentally that good nutrition needs to be gut health centric, anti-inflammatory, sustainable, like good in phytonutrients, like, and we can get into as deep as you want to on my nutrition philosophies, but nutrition is the key. Certainly when it comes to weight loss, like it drives 75 to 80% of the results, because if we're manipulating calories, it's a heck of a lot easier to clean up the nutrition, feel full and energized versus trying to go out and exercise off calories. And as you know intimately as well, food is either nutrition or it's poisonous. It's like it can literally be poison. We eat the wrong kinds of foods that are inflammatory for our GI tract, or too much sugar for glycemic dysregulation. Like we're poisoning ourselves. So there's no amount of exercise that's going to go over that or mitigate that. So we got to get the nutrition nailed. And the way we talk about nutrition is not just strictly in terms of like foods. We like to talk about in terms of schedules and structures. So I believe that busy parents need to get like set routines in place where you know what your meal timing is. Maybe you choose to intermittent fast and either have an early breakfast or skip breakfast. Maybe you have breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner. Maybe you do a 24-hour fast once a week and eat a certain way on given days. But you want to sync that up into your family schedule life so there's less friction. And then we layer on go-to meals into the day that gives you the ability to be consistent.
That's brilliant. And if anyone understands the importance of that, it's going to be parents, right? I mean, my sister has a 1-year-old and she is bump, 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 bump. He's got to nap at this time and eat at this time. And she's just learned, as I'm sure most parents have, if you deviate too far from that schedule, you're going to have a really cranky kid on your hands, or, they're not going to sleep well. And the next day is going to be horrid. And I've noticed the same thing with myself. If I think about the next day, just as a quick example, I'm like, okay, got a busy day tomorrow. I'm going to take this frozen chicken breast, put it in the oven, pre-set the oven to start at 6:45 a.m. so that by the time I get up, I have a chicken breast ready to go. So it's just boom. And maybe it's not the most savory meal, but on a busy day, it's either something quick or nothing at all. But either one of those are usually not good options.
Yeah, totally. And like you just paved the path for your future success. And like the scenario would be, Michael, if either of us showed up at like our clients' houses and like knocked on the door when it was mealtime and handed them, hey, here's your favorite healthy meal. Like, I'll see you in 4 hours. Like, what a service that would be. Everyone would be successful. Here's your food. We got to find a way to do that for ourselves. And this comes down to habits like meal prep. But honestly, quite frankly, you don't have to always be cooking. Like you can get what I call go-to meals that don't require any cooking. So like what I had this morning for breakfast is I had like this power shake that had like almond milk. I had some plant-based protein, basil seeds, hemp seeds. I had an apple on the side, wild blueberries, and like maybe there's some coconut fat in there. Like that was a shake that had so many micronutrients, healthy fats, protein, a little bit of carbohydrate, and it kept me full for like 4 or 5 hours. And so like what if you made a go-to best in slot meal? And for busy parents, and this also applies for entrepreneurs, I believe that we're balancing the forces of consistency with variety. We want both, but I think if we're going to skew on one side, be a little more consistent and save the variety for later in the day when you're mentally kind of decompressing. So I teach in our programs that it's good to dial in go-to meals for like your first 1 to 2 meals of the day. It's a behavioral hook. You don't need to think about it. You can just get into it, go-to meal. Typically is going to be something that makes you feel great, foods that digest well for you, good in nutrition. And then dinner, you have more wiggle room. Like maybe you order something out or in, maybe you cook at home, but like generally following healthy principles. And this seems to work for people because let's say you did have a bad day, and bad day defined by you ate things off plan, you missed a meal, you're out with the kids for sports, you get fast food. Like now you have a behavioral hook to get back on the next day, because it's not a problem that you ate one meal that was not healthy. It's just a problem when that shifts your momentum to the state where now you have weeks off plan because you're feeling guilty or whatever. Yeah. So these behavioral hooks of consistent go-to meals in the beginning of the day are massively important.
And I've also found that to be totally the case, where during the day I can do the quick, more simple, bake, set it and forget it sort of meals. And then usually come dinner, I'm wanting something fresh cooked or maybe ordered in, a little more savory. And if you've hit the daytime correctly, you also haven't built up a huge caloric deficit so
Yep.
that dinner becomes like, and I've also done that. And, this reminds me of something else that was news to me, but we recently reviewed, there was this study that made all these rounds that these researchers found if you intermittent fast, there was a 92% increased risk of cardiovascular mortality. Wasn't actually accurate. And when you review it, you see there's a number of errors in the methodology that question the validity. But when you look at the meta-analyses on intermittent fasting, what was interesting is looking at the same windows of fasting and the same caloric intake, but those who fasted and ate earlier in the day compared to those who fasted all day and ate late dinners, even with the same amount of calories, those who ate dinner by or around 6 p.m. had more weight loss, better insulin, and better fasting glucose. So coming back to the concept of a schedule, and this is also something I've really struggled with because it's so easy to just sort of nip away a little bit during the day and then gorge at night, and oftentimes gorge too late at night. I've lost and kept off 5 pounds just by eating earlier. It's really been amazing because that meta-analysis motivated me. I tried it, and I mean, within a week, I saw pretty significant changes. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that a schedule is really crucial for success.
I completely agree as well. And I mean, like on the fasting front, like I have, it's come into my awareness too, and I practice this as well and teach it to our clients. Like eating dinner earlier is a good thing. And I think we're learning more about circadian biology, how light cycles are changing, our genes dynamically, and just the impact of eating too heavy of a meal on sleep. Like when your heart rate's going to be higher, your core temperature is going to be higher when there's that much digestion. And there's a lot of people now who are tracking their sleep with all the Oura rings, seeing that sleep scores kind of get destroyed if you eat too much food too late, even if it's like a calorie balance plan. And we know that if you want to increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, one risk factor would be like have disrupted sleep for sure. Totally. So there's many variables here, but I'm trying to eat during the time when the sun is setting or set. Like I try to be like kind of wrapped up, and that doesn't work like that all the time, but hey, you have a schedule and something to aim for, and that's what we need. We need a template that works for us, that doesn't have a lot of friction, and we want to aim for it the best we can a given day. And if it doesn't work out perfectly this day, we have the next day. It's a practice. You don't win the game of health. Even if you're super healthy, like you still got to show up 5-10 years from now to do it. So connecting to it in a way that's fun and also makes sense to you. That's why learning on these podcasts is so good, because you're making new neural connections to ideas that have been floating around. And now you're more motivated because you're like, oh shit, I see the puzzle coming together. I know why I felt that way that one time. You're literally becoming more solid by listening to this. You're solidifying your understanding. And for that, I'm really excited for everyone who's here.
Also, if you have good foundational behaviors, if there is a night where you end up going out late and eating too late, you can buffer that because you have this foundation that's doing these things by the book. And I think that's really important to mention, is that the indulgences have far less of a deleterious impact if they're done against a really solid baseline.
100%. And one thing we build in, which is kind of cool for many reasons, is we don't call them cheat meals because that like has a weird connotation that you're doing something like bad. We call them free meals. And when we're teaching people how to like manage their own nutrition plan, their behaviors, we give them the ability to have a free meal per week. And you typically like plan for it. Like I'm going out with friends Friday night and we're going to a restaurant, like that's a free meal, and you do what you want. And then you learn to experience the consequences the next day. Like very times when I have free meals, I love the meal. It's like, it's super enjoyable. And the next day I'm bloated, my GI tract is a little off, and like, it just makes me reflect like, oh, and sometimes I'm like, man, that was great. I love that. I was so glad I did it. Other times I was like, man, I didn't need that third piece of pizza and the sushi. Like that was just like too much. Right. And so we're teaching ourselves through the carrot and the stick. And I think that's good because that also trains us. So free meals, plan them, and you learn from how your body responds to these things. And over time, I start to do these way less just because I love feeling great, but still, it's a fine time to enjoy food.
And that feedback is important because, especially in the cohort that we often speak with, they're so motivated, they're so well-read, that they can end up being too adherent to the rules, and they don't do anything outside of the box, and they're just operating off of fear. Well, can't have gluten, can't have dairy, can't have oxalates, can't have carbs. And they probably could. And they'd actually feel a lot better if they had that free meal, which I'm going to borrow, by the way. I love that. Every once in a while, they'd feel less encumbered by all the rules. And they'd also discover through that biofeedback, what can I do? What can I do? Maybe carbs are okay for me. if it's like rice and sushi, but maybe it's the sugars. So maybe I say yes on the pizza, yes on the sushi, but no on the cake. And that's how you learn, like, what, where can I have that wiggle and that fun with minimum repercussion?
For sure. And I mean, I think it's a stage in our development, like psychologically, to when we're learning something, we become passionate to get into very black and white thinking. I can speak for myself, and I'm sure you as a health educator as well. You go through a period where you connect to an idea that is like really true in your experience, and then you like really think and see everything through that lens.
Yeah.
And then you grow and you mature and you start to experience the gray areas, and then you become a little less dogmatic. I think we see that progression happen in most fields with people who go further down. And I'd also say there's ways to be smart about it. Like, listen, if you know a food just like wrecks you and you have wheat or some kind of gluten proteins and it's terrible, then you don't need to have that for your free meal. But I'd also invite, like, hey, take some digestive enzymes, chew your food more slowly, apple cider vinegar before the meal, like whatever tricks or hacks that you like to do. Like, there's a way to do that. It's not necessary, but psychologically, it's beneficial to be able to have the flexibility. So I mean, on the nutrition side, we could go deeper, but I think for the sake of the pyramid, I'll continue on building up. So we've had the mindset and the sleep at the bottom. Now we have a good, solid nutrition plan. Next up there is not workouts. It's daily activity. And I think we need to start to make this distinction. Like, the human body to live a long time is meant to move. And working out has become a cultural thing that happens under fluorescent lights, in a box, in a particular setting, with a particular kind of clothes on. And when I look around at the pockets of longevity around the world, the centenarians, like, they're not doing P90X. Sure, they benefit from doing some high intensity exercise, but they're moving, they're gardening, they're outside, they're walking, accumulating steps. And we become so damn sedentary. And so I think it's good to just start to think about checking movement box every single day, because it may be true that on a given day, you don't have time to exercise. You don't have 45 minutes to set aside to go do a weight training workout. Your schedule is just too packed. But I promise you have the ability to do 3 or 4 10-minute walks. And you could definitely get in some bodyweight squats or hanging from a pull-up bar in your office, and you could bake movement into your day. When we start to get out of the rigid all or nothing concept of exercise and we start to check the box of daily movement, our bodies improve. And also understanding that movement is it's not for the calories burned. It's really for a healthier nervous system, for more presence, for more breathing through your nose and oxygenating your system. Let alone you get outside, you get the circadian rhythm benefits. We're meant to move. So I'd like people to understand that daily movement is more important than formal workouts. We've had clients lose over 100 pounds not touching a treadmill or a dumbbell. They get new nutrition, they walk a lot, and like, you can do it. I mean, when we get into the realm of like, you want to be fit, you want to pack on muscle, we need to stress the body with higher intensity training, no doubt about that. But foundationally, for a long life, movement is more important. And I think we're going to find a lot of people who are running high stress, fast paced lives and doing CrossFit 2-3 times a week and doing a ton of fasting and never really like recovering, and they're very sympathetic. That probably takes years off your life than the person who is more chill, doing walking, meditating, managing their stress. Like, that system is going to live a lot longer. And there's a happy medium between that, like having fire and having water, I guess you could say metaphorically. But I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I think it's really well said. And there was also another meta-analysis recently that found it wasn't a super high bar for how many steps you need to significantly curb your mortality risk. It was 8,000, which for most people, it's probably just like you said, 3 roughly 10-minute walks should get you to about 8,000 steps, maybe even a little over. But the point is, you don't need, it's not like, oh my God, a walk, I got to go out for an hour and it's going to be this long thing. It could be literally around the block. And I think that's really important to underscore, because sometimes people, they might think a walk needs to be more, lengthy than it actually does. And also, if you can get in nature, huge benefits if you can do that walk in nature. And kids, in my experience, also love going for a walk. My niece and nephew, they never say no to a walk. In fact, they're always like to their father, can we go on a walk with Uncle Mike? And if it's too late, he's like, well, I don't know, it's getting kind of close to bedtime. They're always wanting to go for a walk. So I can't speak for all kids, but in my experience, kids love walking.
Yeah, for sure. And like, what did we like? I'm thinking about like watching like this old school movie, like I don't know if it's like Pride and Prejudice or something like this, where it's like set a couple hundred years ago, and like you look at like the courtship scenes, and like the guy pulls up on the horse and they like meets the woman and they go on a walk out in the farmland. Like That's what people did together before we had screens and electronics. It's probably as fundamental to human history as we walk together, first as tribes, then as, family units. We're meant to walk together. And if you can walk after meals, you get the benefit of better glycemic control. If you walk in the morning, you get the circadian rhythm benefits. If you walk as a work break, you get to decompress your spine. So move, walk, whatever way you like to move your body. That's it. It's not exercise. So I love that, and great with kids for sure as well.
And so then we come into the fifth, which I'm assuming is some sort of structured exercise plan. But I also, just to step back, I love the way you're framing this because, especially when people have more demands, and most people having kids probably sometime in their late 20s to, in their 30s, that's also when people are going to probably have their peak earning potential vocationally. So you stack the child stress, the vocational stress, and if all exercise is super high intense, as great as that is, and as much as I personally enjoy that, if we're overemphasizing that without looking at sleep, recovery time, walking, then I think you're making a really compelling case that we're going to set someone up for failure because they're just too burnt out. They're too sympathetic. There's too much sort of really vigorous stress on the system.
Absolutely true. And now we're here when it comes to exercise, and now we're looking to get pulses of high intensity exercise throughout the week. And this could come in many forms, and it'd be tailored to what you want to experience in your goals. I would say as a blanket statement, and it becomes more important as you age, is strength training is probably the foundational thing that you want to be focusing on. Many ways to do that, but now we're realizing how important muscle is for lifespan and longevity. Like, I think grip strength is one of your greatest predictors of cognitive health. We know muscle is a huge impact on your metabolism as you get older, keeps you more insulin sensitive when you're training. So we want to be doing strength training. And the cool thing about that is even one strength training pulse per week is good. 2 would be better. 3 is sufficient. And it's not like you need to be training every single day unless you love it. But just a couple pulses of strength training exercise, 20 minutes to an hour, depending on what kind of routine you want to set up. And programs like ours give you the structured routines to follow. But typically free weights, kettlebells, dumbbells, bands, machines, stuff you can do at home or the gym, but getting a little routine in place that has joint-friendly exercises that works on strength, cardio, and mobility. And you do these workouts, talk about an ROI. You can get a 20, 30-minute workout in, and you get metabolic, hormonal, and even genetic benefits for the next 2, 3, 4 days, maybe even longer. It's an insane return on investment. And then you look at the scheduling aspect of it. Okay, I'm a busy person. I got a busy schedule. Now you start to schedule your workouts in like they're meetings. And now you're kind of building an architecture of a really cool schedule rhythm. Kids are dropped off here, get a quick workout in here. Now you're having an integrated experience of your whole lifestyle. And when people say, I don't have time to exercise, that means they're still trapped in the concept that your schedule is something separate than your workouts. You have all these life responsibilities and your fitness is something separate. I'm trying to help you weave and collapse that in, and starting with what's very doable for you. So a couple pulses of strength training a week. It could also be high intensity cardio. It could also be playing a sport, but you give the body a lot of tension in the muscles. It causes a lot of great adaptations.
Right. What's that old saying? What gets scheduled gets done.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
yeah. I love how you're thinking about integrating that. And truly, that's probably the way to succeed, because if you're expecting an hour just to present itself in your day, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to have to plan that hour or even less, 20, 30 minutes in order to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. And effective exercise doesn't take that long. And if you do want to set aside 45 minutes and do a full body strength training session, and you do it twice per week, you pick one motion per body part. It could look like dumbbell squats, and dumbbell rows, dumbbell chest press, shoulder presses, and curls. That's a simple, there's more optimal workouts than that. But let's say you did that in your home, 3 sets each exercise, or you did a circuit of all that. And you did that twice a week. The impact of setting aside that 90 minutes of time versus not doing anything, it's thousands of times better results by just creating that little stimulus. It's an opportunity to create a stimulus. And as you get older, your recovery capacity from exercise does decrease. You don't have to hit it all the time. You can hit it and allow the recovery process to happen and then hit it again.
So there's a few objections that come up, right? When you want someone to exercise. One is time. And I think you've spoken to that. You and your team are going to help people sort of plan this into their day. So that helps with the objection of time. What about know-how? I don't know how to squat. I don't know how to, I'm assuming you guys have materials for these basic movements that will make it really easy. You don't need a trainer. You don't need special equipment, but can you speak to that?
For sure. I mean, with any task, like we have resistance insofar as we're not clear on it or it's new. And then when we get competent with it, we get more confidence and then it actually becomes fun. Same thing when you're learning how to exercise. And like programs like ours, complete step-by-step tutorial videos, follow-along videos, coaches providing feedback, and like we help people get super comfortable with exercise and make exercise very accessible. Like unlike, I mean, I'm going to pick on CrossFit a little bit, like try to take someone who's not exercising and teach them how to do a power clean with a barbell or do box jumps or do Turkish get-ups or some crazy exercise. Like it's insane. But fundamentally, the way I look at it is this human body moves in planes. We can squat, which is like squatting down. We can hinge at the hip, which is basically a deadlift. We can push and pull things away from our bodies, push-ups, rows. We can push or pull overhead, shoulder press, pull-ups. Like these are the planes of motion that are foundational to the body. These are the same motions we want to be strong at when we're 13 as well as when we're 83. And so we teach you how to move fluidly. It's honestly not as much of a learning as it is like a reconnection to the fundamental movement patterns that are kind of like baked in. Like if you have grandkids or if you have family members with kids and you look, I have a 2-year-old daughter. I look at her squat, dude, she's just got a perfect squat, like perfect mobility, bends down, playing with things. Like we have these movement patterns like baked deep in us. We've just gotten so stiff and rigid. So it's a reconnection process to that. And like, if you get the benefit of joining a program or having a guide work you through it, like we walk you through step by step and make it fun in the process. And so if you don't, you try to do it on your own, I think that's where people start to build up more friction. And there's a certain amount of friction for every person based on their life demands that's going to finally derail them. And that is just one point of friction. Another point might be actually having just a lot of straight up busyness. Another point might be having tighter finances right now. And if you make a constellation of enough friction points, you're going to fail. So which one of those are relevant for you? Which ones do you need to peel off? And like the information know-how, find someone who knows the path like us or other trainers and it'll help a ton.
Is there an age that, someone, it might be not the ideal age to go through the program? Because I'm thinking of mothers, but you also said grandkids. So I'm thinking about grandmothers. If someone is in their 60s or 70s, could your program still help them?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we have even people in their young 80s who have tried the program. Very few of them, but the majority of our program members are probably 45 to 60. And we have some people in their 70s who are getting after it. And there's some really inspiring stories online of people who actually start training in their 60s and 70s and then go on to like do triathlons or compete in bodybuilding. Like the cool thing is like the fountain of youth, especially now I'm going back to strength training, we tap that. Like those longevity genes, the sirtuins, they get turned on when we start to strength training, we start to eat healthier. So if you want to live a long time, like you actually invest now, it's never too late to get better. And there are some longevity theorists out there who believe that like, all of us can start like reversing aging by understanding the mechanisms of aging and breakdown. And like whether or not it's true that we can actually like really turn back the biological clock if we're starting in our 60s and like live to 120, like I can't speak to that. We'll see what the medical advances are going to be, but like it should never be an obstacle for someone to say, I'm too old to do stuff. You can be so much better than you are. And the amazing thing is it might have taken you 2, 3, 4 decades to get to the unhealthy state you're at. When it comes to the fitness side of things, once you get these pillars in place, you can make a dramatic turnaround in 6 months to 1 year. Like you can lose 100 pounds in a year. You can get off all your medications likely in a year. And I'm not saying specifically for every person listening, but that profound magnitude of change can happen in that amount of time. And so relatively speaking, like, let's go. Now's the time.
So I think you've already answered this question, and it's going to be different for different people, but is there sort of one lesson or one technique you've taken away that you would want to sort of remind people of that's the most powerful in moving them through to make change?
Yeah, I think it's the process of how change happens. So like, let's talk about like, if you're running a business, you need to gain some clarity. You need to look at what product or service do I offer? Does the market like it? So you need to have clarity on what's going to happen there. You need to put in action to go create that thing. It requires an energetic investment to make it. And then you need to be surrounded by an environment that gives you enough resource and nourishment to succeed. It's like that's the elements of creation, like clarity, focused effort, supportive environment as much as we can. And as long as you stay consistent with those elements, success happens. That's how athletes get good. They learn the skills, they work the plan, they have coaching and great teammates and that keep them on track long term. They succeed. It's kind of the similar thing in parenting. And I think it's the same thing with our health to start to understand that it's so personal because we're talking about working on ourselves and our bodies. So we often forget that it's actually a process. It's like, where are you lacking in this equation? Where have you tripped up in the past? Are you lacking clarity on what to eat, how to move? Do you not know what kind of workouts you're doing? Maybe that's the problem. Have you not had enough of a supportive environment and encouragement to keep you going? Have you felt like you just consistently like lose motivation over time or can't find the time to take the action? So thinking about this concept, I think, is the meta check-in point. And then all the strategies fall in any three of these categories, but this is where people trip up. And I also think it's like I like to have people set goals and be more structured with their bodies. Like insofar as we might have like a business plan or a business reviews its finances at the end of a month or its inventory and it tracks some data. And we can do the same things with our bodies. We can set a 30-day goal, a 60-day goal. We can track our weight or blood markers over time. We can peg it to like a process, getting back to understanding this is a process. And when we treat it a little more as a process versus just like we're merged into the pain, the success, and the emotion as us, it allows us to be a little more objective. It allows us to be a little less emotional in the right kind of way, like connected but not reactive. And ultimately, the people who win this health and fitness game, they're the most sustainable. They stay on track the longest. So I know that's a little bit of a metaphoric answer, but I think it's honestly what's most true.
I like it. And especially when you talk about just measuring, like you look at the finances to make sure you're a profitable business as one sort of report card index. You could look at, well, I want to be able to jog a mile in 9 minutes. And when you first start, you're doing it in 15. And after a month, you're like, wow, I'm already down to 13 minutes. And even though I'm not like the guy on TV, the marathon runner doing it in 5 or 6, I'm doing well. And it also reminds me of this quote, comparison is the thief of joy. So if you can look at yourself and benchmark against yourself, then yeah, I could see that being really motivating, just seeing those small wins accrue month over month over month.
Yes, and that's a beautiful point you brought up. We want to find many, many measuring sticks. If you're trying to lose weight, I believe it's good to track your weight because what gets measured and tracked often gets improved. Right. But as you get more fit, like it's not as much about the scale typically. It might be more performance in the gym or running, or maybe you're tracking some of your biometrics like your resting heart rate, your sleep and readiness scores, just your overall happiness and however you can rank that. But finding many, many measuring sticks and creating new ones to keep it fun, that's a huge part of the journey. Because I think what we want is we want to feel like we're moving forward. We want to feel like we're growing and the energy that we're investing is having payoff. And that's what life energy is. Life is moving forward. It's growing. The sunflower is reaching up towards the sky. It's drawing in water and nutrients. It's soaking in solar energy. It's striving naturally. And I think in ourselves, when we feel most aligned is when we feel like we're moving forward in some kind of motivated container. When we feel depressed, it's because we don't have clarity. We're stuck in the rut. Yeah. Everything's kind of backsliding into these negative behaviors. We feel like we're just kind of rotting in a sense. And so the opposite experience of that, of positivity, tracking, striving, growing, connecting, is what we want to tie to our health journey.
I love that. You reminded me of a quote I'll paraphrase from this book that's pretty interesting. It's called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And they were saying that purpose is not necessarily achieving a thing, it's a process. It's having something that you feel is important and just dedicating yourself day over day to that process and doing that thing. And I think that maps onto what you're saying. It's not about hitting a goal. While that's definitely important, it's the larger process that goal achievement is contained within, of just having a day that allows you to move and to sleep and to eat well, and sort of losing yourself in that entire process, which will obviously yield massive beneficial impacts on how people show up as mothers, as fathers, and just in their life in general.
Well, yeah, and one maybe last thing I'll say is, the cool thing is make this a learning journey. Like, and everyone listening to this podcast up to this point is clearly someone who is here to learn. Like, you are in it. Like, you like health, you want to feel better. And that's so beautiful because there is so much to learn about all these different facets that we briefly touched on today. Soak it in, find the joy in expanding your knowledge and then trying it out in your own experimentation in your own life. I think that's a game we can all play together. And then each decade of life is going to present new challenges and limitations. We got to give some things up, add some new things in. And then we're kind of, it feels like life can be a little more of a dance than a grind. And you know, I'm speaking a little like poetically, but I think that's like what a beautiful life seems like to me, where we're living aligned, we're pursuing things that are meaningful to us, we're doing the best we can, we're learning and we're growing, we're passing it on to others, and we're letting go with things that no longer serve us at each successive year.
Yeah. I mean, and certainly for longer term motivation and compliance, if it's a dance, I would argue people can dance longer than they can grind, right?
For sure.
Where can people go if they want to learn more and get started? And any other sort of, pointers if someone's saying, okay, this resonates, I want to take some action?
Sure. Well, I mean, if the system that I told you and the philosophies that you heard today resonate with you, and you are someone who legitimately wants to improve their physical fitness, the way their body looks, feels, and moves, and you like the idea of having a schedule and setup, and you want a program in a community that's either specifically for fit fathers, dads, men over 40, or fit mothers, moms, women over 40. And I will say this, of our program members, not everyone is dads and moms, but we have communities of middle-aged adults who are looking at improving their fitness. Then you can find us at our two websites that have all the details on our programs, fitfatherproject.com or fitmotherproject.com. And we have a bunch of like free sample resources like free meal plans and workouts that if you want to just start to see our training philosophy, but of course our programs are there just to join, and you can join anytime. Our coaches will greet you, we'll get you into the community, we'll walk you through everything. So our website's fitfatherproject.com, fitmotherproject.com. And I also say this, I think the websites are the best place to start, but if you do like YouTube videos, if you've enjoyed how I presented and you want to just hear more videos of me sharing things, then our YouTube channels are also great resources. You can find us with our names on YouTube.
Sweet. Well, Anthony, I really appreciate and resonate a lot with your philosophy. I'm sure that our audience will too. It's been a really fun discussion. So thanks for taking the time, and thanks for all the hard work you're doing to help reduce the friction for people getting healthy, because the Lord knows we need it. We need healthier people out there because it's just going to make the world a better and brighter place. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.